Hey everyone in meat space, welcome to Destroy All Clickbait, the show that protects you from the ideological meme toxins distributed by the internet. I'm Adam, this is Ing and Avi. We're all here again to discuss the clickbait that haunts the internet. So, hi guys.
Hello.
We've had a busy week, I know, and some technical problems from last week, of course, which are required by any podcast, but we're all ready to entertain you. So, who would like to go first? Who has something good for us?
I can't say I have anything. So.
I kind of have something, but it's maybe a bit heavier / bitchier to talk about, so maybe I'll keep it for the second thing, if you have anything, Adam.
Okay. I do have something, so okay, fair enough. Well, this is mine is extremely light, so I think I think that may be good. Okay, here's the
Adam P. said BuzzFeed.com.
The BuzzFeed article.
Oh my god.
You know it's good. And it's 10 pictures that prove Bruno Mars is actually Powerline from a Goofy movie. This is from 2014, actually. This is going back a while. But,
oh my god.
I'm actively lost. I have not seen a Goofy movie, nor am I aware of who Bruno Mars is, so this could all be Deep State activating a sleeper agent.
Don't click the link, Ing! Don't click the link! If you want yes, Abby, please tell us.
Well, a Goofy movie, when did it come out? It came out in the 90s at some point. I remember seeing it in theaters. I have a vague recollection of seeing it in theaters, and it is a good movie.
Very good,
It's gotten, over the past couple of years, a lot of nostalgia hype, for good reason, because it's a father-son bonding movie, basically, between Goofy and Max, and it's very, very touching. And Powerline is this pop star who I think is mostly fashioned after Prince and probably a couple of other black musicians from that time period.
I'm seeing some Michael Jackson.
Well, he's Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson actually wrote a song for the character.
Did he? Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, yes. So he is definitely very much Michael Jackson, but he has a specific theme of being a mad scientist with electrical doodads and stuff.
So I would say a little bit of Bowie's in there as well.
Although
as a result of that.
It is somehow an interesting bit from the 90s that, of course, the character is like a Goofy-esque dog, but it looks more like Michael Jackson than Michael Jackson did in that era.
He does, you're right.
Bruno Mars is a current-day pop star. If you've heard Uptown Funk, he did that.
Yep.
No. So.
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All right, I will have to link you to Uptown Funk now.
Yeah, he's
this is
he's a pop
Parsons
star.
Project or Blue Oyster Cult. I don't know it. Although, no, serious credit to the character designer there, that even in the Disney animal cartoon style, it is a very good kind of caricature, getting some of Michael Jackson's
yeah.
traits there that I was immediately able to recognize it.
He's definitely very, as you say, he's definitely he's not just straight up Michael Jackson, but
he's definitely a mix of quite a few different artists from the 90s, I would say.
But yes, it's if I'm not mistaken, there's I think 2 songs over the course of the movie, and they were written by Michael Jackson for the movie. So, that's his. See, I'm saying that, and now I'm wondering if this is a Mandela effect, and I'm actually forgetting. Michael Jackson did not, in fact, write any songs for it. But let me see here, Michael.
TV tropes would know.
Oh no, I'm up there.
It was actually based on Bobby Brown, who was meant to voice Powerline. Okay, hang on a minute. Since people are going, was he inspired by Michael Jackson? Then that seems to cast my statement into doubt.
So according to TV Tropes, Powerline is the ultimate early 90s pop star amalgamation of Prince, Michael Jackson with a healthy scoop of Bobby Brown thrown in just because. Oh, and voiced by Tevin Campbell.
Okay. He wasn't voiced by Michael Jackson. I was just trying to find if Michael Jackson wrote the songs. But anyway. Okay, I may in fact be incorrect.
I think you're incorrect because it has the going from the Disney Wiki, it has at least one of the songs is attributed to Tevin Campbell.
Well, that's the voice actor,
right?
So
that's the performer. Yeah, it's not. I have a feeling if it wasn't Michael Jackson, that would be under trivia, but
yeah.
This isn't helping my fear that our show is just more three idiots read the internet, but
Yay!
What? You were afraid?
Never!
That's the entire concept of the show.
Yeah, I mean, we're reading clickbait, for goodness sake.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Check under trivia.
No, it looks as though Michael Jackson did not factor it. I guess my brain is compiling that together with Bart Simpson with Do the Bartman, which was written by Michael Jackson. That I do know, along with Lisa, It's Your Birthday, and a couple other songs.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely Michael Jackson, and I know that for a fact. Right? Wait, I'm not crazy about that one, right? That he wrote Do the Bartman?
To the Googlepedia.
To the Googlepedia?
Okay.
I just go to TV Tropes. Because TV Tropes is usually a pretty solid place for this kind of stuff.
Performance in
Hey,
Jackson.
good news! Good news, Adam. You're wrong on that one, too.
Oh, no!
It has backing
I did not see any trivia about who wrote the musical numbers, so...
It has backing
Sorry.
vocals from Michael Jackson, but was produced and written by Brian Lauren.
Oh, okay, there you go. And Michael Jackson's one of the producers. So, at least Michael Jackson was definitely involved in Do the Bartman. That was not my imagination. Did Michael Jackson write all his own songs? He had the writers writing his songs too, right?
I know he had a lot of musical input in most of his music. But I wouldn't say like every single song was 100% him by any means, because it never is. So
no, of course, no. But I think even in terms of credited co-writers, I think did Quincy Jones write songs, or was he just the producer for Michael Jackson? I guess we don't know any of this stuff.
Again, this isn't Blue Oyster Cult or Alan Parsons Project. I don't know this.
See, I'm pretty sure you're younger than I am, Ing, and you're talking about how you only like 70s '70s rock.
Yeah. I have a few things from classic rock from the 80s and some of the pop rock from the 90s, but the stuff I got into as an adult was all effectively 70s prog rock.
Oh my god.
Well, I don't blame you for I'm the same way, don't get me wrong. I've always been a decade or so behind what everyone else was listening to. I was hugely out of sync with music when I was a kid. That was the thing I got teased for the most when I was a kid, just because I wasn't into whatever people were listening to. Nirvana didn't. Kurt Cobain's death sort of impacted me 4 years later when I was finally into Nirvana, basically. After he was dead.
I know what you mean, but I like to imagine that it was 4 years later of teenage Adam going to everyone, hey, have you found this new band Nirvana? I think that Kurt Cobain's going places, and someone looking at you.
Yeah.
He died. It's like, oh my god, today?
Yeah. It's it was the Claire Danes talking in that Oliver Stone movie. He's like, how come Patsy Cline doesn't make no new records no more? Because she's dead.
She's dead. And lately, all I've been listening to have been
that's
remixed
what I mean. She's not making anything
video
new.
game
Why
music.
Is that?
I was just barely above that level. You're joking about that, Ing, but that is more or less what I was in school. Like,
I'm joking by really speaking.
I didn't
from
know
experience.
who anyone was. There you go, brother. We are the same. Yes. Took me. Yeah. I didn't even get into like David Bowie until like the last decade. I caught up with David Bowie in time for him to, in time for me to go, boy, if he ever performs again, I got to go see a concert of his, and then he died.
Oh, well, that's just sad.
But, in time for adult Adam to go,
sad.
hey, have you heard this David Bowie guy? I think he's going places.
Pretty much, except I don't usually recommend music to people for that exact reason, that I'm always like recommending things that is everyone else looks at me like, are you insane? We all know that guy very well. By the way, in answer to my question, Michael Jackson, he wrote some of his own songs and he had other credited writers on others of his songs, so it was kind of a mix.
Tune in next week where Adam will discover Prince.
Yep, Prince. Yep. But yes. That is definitely, so I can see we're on the same page with regard to that. But anyway, yes, a Goofy movie, Powerline. But Goofy movie is, yes, quite a good little movie. It was that very brief era where, for a moment, and Iron Giant is part of it too, and for like a brief second, it looked like there was going to be classical animation that might get away from the Disney formula, which is the era where I was studying animation as well. And I've had part of the reason I got out of animation is because I kind of felt like classical animation, unfortunately, is getting shoved aside, and I prefer classical to computer animation. And it's
same.
It's because it's not. We were talking about this before, but it's not the best way to make money now. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's frustrating about it is Toy Story came out, and of course Toy Story is great, and Pixar is great. And the Pixar, if you ever listen to Lasseter or one of the Pixar guys from that era, they're basically saying, guys, we love classical animation. Keep making classical animation. There's no reason you can't do what we're doing with classical 2D animation. We just happen to be the pioneers in 3D animation, but everyone had this idea that like the producers and things had this, the money people who didn't actually understand the art form just went, oh well, if it's classical animation, it's got to be a singing princess, and if it's if you want to do something weird, it's got to be
it has to be computer animated. Although now all of the princess movies are also computer animated, so it doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say, now we have Frozen.
Yeah, that's right. Even that category waited a decade, and then it got rolled. And they clearly went, oh yeah, it'd be great to go back to doing princess movies again. But apparently, making a classically animated movie is out of the question. Although it is interesting that I feel like someday soon someone's going to come along and do an indie classical animated movie that's not necessarily like as lush as a Disney movie, but kind of like what Wes Anderson is doing with Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs, which is stop motion. Right. But at least, but there's no, like, he's just doing it the way he wants to do it because he's Wes Anderson. He can do that. He's not feeling the need to make it look like, I guess Leica would be the leaders in stop motion if you're looking for a big studio.
I kind of as you're saying this, like, in my mind, in my, like, mental palace, and in the movie theater there, what I'm imagining it looking like is the unfinished film of The Thief and the Cobbler.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Yes.
Well, isn't it actually finished now? Like, people went back and finished it?
It's one of these things that can never really truly be finished because it was worked on and tweaked and bits taken out and bits added in for decades. Yeah. So it's a case of there's all these sequences that are out there floating. And they've literally said to people, you went out and we sold a chunk of the film to a collector because we didn't think it was ever going to get released. If you have it, can you give it back to us so we can reconstitute it into the film? But for those of you who don't know, the Thief and the Cobbler, also known as The Princess and the Cobbler, also known as Arabian Night, was a movie that kind of saw release in the late 90s but had been worked on for like 30 years by a guy called Richard Williams. who was the animation director for Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the Pink Panther shorts from the 60s and 70s. And it was a really spectacular movie, and he taught animation at Sheridan for a long time, and or maybe it was CalArts, I can't remember. Anyway, he taught a lot of the Disney animators, and in fact, really, Aladdin stole a lot from Thief and the Cobbler.
Yes, it did.
Which had not, in fact, been released at that time when Aladdin came out, but that that is what happened. They were looking at this never finished masterpiece and adapting it into Aladdin.
Basically.
But yeah, But yeah, it's like there's bits that were removed and bits that were added back in, and there's sort of a recobbled cut, which is kind of the best they could do.
The
in some
version
ways,
of the movie I have seen has not large segments, but significant segments are voiced but not animated and have storyboards replacing.
Okay. Because I was going to say, like I've heard that it's been quote-unquote finished in an unfinished way, if that makes any sense. Well, yeah. Like, it's a cohesive story, but it's nowhere near close to being something that can really be released.
Yeah, that's the version I saw, and right now the biggest obstacle I feel to that is kind of the fact that Vincent Price can't finish any new lines.
Right.
But I mean, I think they had all
guy. I think he's really going places.
That voice actor.
Who is this Vincent Price you speak of? Well, I think his stuff, it wasn't so much that they couldn't, like, they had all the stuff they need for coverage. It's just a case of, do we need this because so much of that film is really not so much about the story, it's about, here's a crazy little side sequence with lots of, and in fact, bits of the film were actually made by students, animation students, Williams' own students, who were animated. Like, there's a bit where the thief crawls up the pipes, and that was actually, I think, an exercise he gave to his students to animate the thief going up this pipe. And then there's another bit later on where the thief is trying to fly over this mountain of hands and grab a ruby, and again, that's another sequence I think he gave to his students to animate. So there's fewer, and there's sequences like that where there's 8 million of these sequences, and you couldn't possibly use them all in the movie, and nor would you want to. And so, like, I saw a version like that was pure and unfinished, and it had lots of like pencil tests and stuff, but it had like 10 minutes of the thief running around inside the machine while everything went domino effect on everything. And that is, again, that's the kind of stuff where they just put in everything they had.
Right.
So it wasn't really edited. So it was, quote, finished, but it wasn't edited properly, basically. So
it is worth seeing for the animation, though, because there are a lot of really experimental / kind of trippy animations that are done very well and by hand, and sort of in some ways it looks like some of the color stuff that like the early Flesher animation was doing with their Inkwell stuff.
Right.
Yeah, if you look back on some of the old stuff, that was like incredibly intricate animation that is surprising for, old animation.
Yeah, well, just the fact that he had things like he'll have rows and rows of marching soldiers, and he'll shift the perspective as they're marching, and things done in 3D perspective, but none of it was done with computers. It was all done with by hand, just calculating out what the angles and what the perspectives were going to be, so you could like zoom through a field of soldiers marching and things like that, which must have been insane, because he was really trying to sort of show off what he could do.
Yeah, there's a segment. There's a segment I think if I'm remembering properly, is one of the few interactions actually with the Tixer Cobbler and the Thief, which involves basically a hallway and stairway chase sequence, which has some really, like, amazing tricks that are played with the background, and I believe it's simple monochrome backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's all black.
Yeah, flipping the frames to make the next scene, and just a whole bunch of stuff that's very clever. And very trippy.
Exactly.
It's
like
beautiful.
It's a great film if you get a chance to check it out. There was the version that was released that is probably still the most commonly available version. Was only it was basically they gave him the budget to finish it after Aladdin, but he was taking his time and doing this really lavish version, and people had expected it to be this quick cash in.
Right.
So they kind of stepped in and said, "Okay, you're done." And they did what has apparently only happened a few times in film history, which is the Bond Completion Company stepped in, which is the company that basically ensures a film is going to get finished, and they sort of farmed it out to really, low, cheap ass animators in Korea or whatever, and they did things like they added Matthew Broderick as the voice of the cobbler, who is not supposed to speak in the movie that was released, and it really made for a very disorienting movie where you'd see this stunning sequence and then you'd see this obviously like Saturday morning cartoon in the mid 80s level animation the next scene, and then these really forced songs. And so unfortunately the version that was commercially available for a long time was very, very messed up. But they're, as I say, they've done the recobbled cut, so you can track that down, and that's got more or less what it was supposed to be.
I was mentally working on a joke where it goes from really lavish animation to really lazy ones. I was working on an anime joke, but I just can't.
I don't know.
You just can't make it work. That's okay.
It's just not coming along.
It's just the Funimation practice. That's all.
That anime, I think it's going places.
Yes, I think it may catch on eventually, but I also understand that it was a mistake. Anyway, but
bit of column A, bit of column B.
But anyway, BuzzFeed here has effectively a bunch of pics and GIFs that vaguely, I guess, have Bruno Mars in similar poses to Powerline.
Powerline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's as usual for this show. It's a very dubious connection. It's literally something someone needed to fill a deadline a few years ago.
You know what? I'll say that this actually, because I'm just thinking of tracking down everything from, like, all the Bruno Mars things to possibly going scene by scene to clip things from their copy of the Goofy movie. This probably required more work than some other stuff.
True, yes.
And I'm sure it was a very good use of their time, whatever they might have otherwise been doing.
Well, hey, they got paid to basically rewatch the Goofy movie, so...
Yeah. Although, truth be told, if we're perfectly honest, Bruno Mars is definitely pulling from all of those artists that Powerline is based off of.
Yeah.
So... he is Powerline.
Exactly.
Let's be real.
Well, it's kind of the thing that it was like, oh yeah, Donald Trump reminds me of Biff from Back to the Future. It's like, well... yeah, although I guess it would be in this case, well, that Donald Trump Jr. reminds me of Biff from Back to the Future. Yes, because he's basing himself on what inspired that character.
Yeah.
Exactly. As somebody said a while ago, it's like whenever you see, if Trump reminds you of an 80s movie villain, it's because all the 80s movie villains are based on Donald Trump.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of which the weirdest one is always going to be Gremlins 2, because they made him sympathetic in that movie.
Really?
I don't know if that one's entirely Trump. It doesn't have enough Trumpisms, but it is very much of like a take on the 80s executive character.
He is definitely conceived of. I mean, his name is Clamp, for God's sake.
Yeah,
and
there was
conceived
that part. But I mean, like in the,
I think I think what I heard. Yeah, no, he's not like Trump at all as a personality in the movie. But I believe that's how I understood it, is that they cast John Glover, and he just started playing him as like likable, and as the movie evolved, they just went, okay, he's not really Trump anymore. He's kind of a semi-decent guy. so it evolved. But I think, the first draft of the script, he's just straight up Donald Trump.
Oh my god, there's one gif of Powerline moving with the way it's looped. I think it looks like that basically his legs are switching sides in between dance step, and I've just been watching it for minutes, and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah,
is it the pink one?
Yes.
Number 9?
Yes!
Well, because the 9. Yes,
and part of it has just been my brain stuck on this. Is this a genuine animation mistake or animation decision, or is this the way the GIF is looping? And it's like, stop focusing on it.
I can't tell, to be honest.
I know.
I don't think it's how it's looping. Because his leg goes behind his other leg, and then that leg just sort of pops to the side. It's very strange.
The GIF is possibly missing a frame or two, or just the way it's playing is making it look that way. But yeah. I guess so. Maybe they wanted to show he's such a good dancer he can rotate his waist 360 degrees and do that. So who knows?
Sure. He's a cartoon. It's okay if that happens.
Yeah, but it's some Jake from Adventure Time shit going on there.
Yeah, it's pretty odd looking, but he's an odd looking character, so There you go. And again, he resembles, the thing is, because it's the Goofy movie, everyone in the Goofy movie world vaguely resembles Goofy. They're the same, whatever cartoon sentient dog species that Goofy is.
Yeah.
So Powerline is this. So Powerline is basically a cool Michael Jackson Prince-esque pop star who looks like Goofy. So if you can get that around your head.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at.
Well, mind you, I think it was a couple of years ago that somebody on Tumblr came under the realization that as a result of a Goofy movie and the existence of Max, that Goofy once had a wife.
Right, exactly.
What happened to her? We'll never know.
Okay, so I have to bring this up since this came up with a conversation with some other friends where apparently there was a long debate and it proposed the idea that there was a Goofy short called Dad's Day Off.
Okay.
Which involved basically Goofy staying home from work while his wife is out and doing the usual thing. And during the course of it, there's something like the neighbor, the milkman, and the mailman something wind up kissing Goofy, thinking that he's his wife, just like out of reflex. And the joke is that's part of his wife's routine there. So then it became established, okay, here's the clarification. Max is not actually his biological son.
Oh, God.
Because Goofy is a cuckold. There we go. We don't have... And then there became the long debate where the positives give their... all else aside, the concept that Goofy is a cuckold is a better alternative to the concept that Goofy has had sex.
Oh, my God. As opposed to just maybe... he adopted Max and was never married to begin with.
Yeah. If there's one character who's not going to catch on, it's Goofy, for God's sake. So that does make a certain amount of sense.
But the thought of Goofy having sex is so disturbing. Goofy being a cuckold is the comforting alternative.
Oh my God! As opposed to being, I don't know, somewhat. And not the opposite of disheartening, somewhat hopeful for people. Like,
yes, I was inspired by a Goofy movie because if he could do it, so can
exactly.
Look, if we're going down that road, it's almost guaranteed that someone has had sex with Gilbert Gottfried.
Well, yeah, unfortunately.
Wow, that's a turn. Gilbert Gottfried is, I'm sure, he's a persona, though. I'm sure that off stage he's a charismatic...
a normal person?
No. But here's the thing. There is actually an answer in, like, the actual Disney lore of a candidate for who Goofy's wife was.
Really?
Yeah, Clarabelle
Cow, right?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, that's traditionally Goofy's girlfriend back in the old days. Yep.
Huh.
And he was also in the very earliest days. His name was Dippy Dog.
That I knew about. Yes.
Yeah.
Which also means that it's possible that Mac's real father is a character named Horace Horsecollar, but...
Yes, that's right. Horace Horsecollar. Yeah, they had a weird thing where sometimes she was dating Goofy and sometimes she was dating Horace.
But Horace is still a character.
Holy fuck.
He doesn't show up as often, but Horace still shows up in things.
Why? I'm sorry, why did my mind go to this? I just really had a thought now. With the fact that apparently that Clarabelle was at times dating both Horace and Goofy.
Yes, she was.
There's possibly grounds that we could go into like a high school prequel to the Goofy movie.
Yup. Basically. Pretty much.
Hire me, please. Please.
Yeah. All kinds of extremely bad ideas for what we can do with your beloved.
You can't criticize me for this. We made Monsters U. That's a thing that's out.
Oh, Monsters U wasn't that bad.
No, it isn't. I'm just saying there's precedence.
Well, in the current Mickey cartoons, with the Paul Rudish cartoons that are out there, they've been doing for a few years now. They get, as I've commented on Facebook, I mean, one of them literally ends with the implication that Mickey and Minnie are having sex in Goofy's stomach.
What?
Did you not see that? No. Well, first of all, have you seen the new Mickey cartoons? There's a bunch of...
I did not know it involved...
The new Mickey cartoons are amazing, and you should watch them.
I did not know it involved vor sluttery.
It's not. It's more a case of just... somebody recently was just saying that it sounded a bit like it felt a bit inspired by Ren and Stimpy in some ways. It's certainly much more over the top and madcap than is usually associated with Disney. But there's one cartoon that has Mickey and Minnie trying to have a quiet dinner alone, and Goofy keeps barging in on them and bothering the heck out of them, and Goofy's so hungry. And it literally ends with, how can we get some peace? How can we be alone? And then it ends with them in his stomach, eating a romantic dinner in Goofy's stomach, and then the implication that, and now it's done, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So they're going to have sex in Goofy's stomach, apparently.
That's someone's fetish. That counts.
It's an official Disney comic.
That's like a vor.
This is an official Disney cartoon, by the way. There's also one where they literally acknowledge that Goofy is a dog and Pluto is also a dog, because they have. He's going to take Pluto to the dog show, and Pluto gets sick or something, so Goofy volunteers instead to be his dog at the dog show. And then some of the judges at the dog show are dogs, talking dogs. So they basically just did it to mess with everyone's mind who has ever made that connection.
Okay, last time I had a really bad cold or flu was also about the time the new DuckTales premiered.
Okay.
And I somehow fell down a rabbit hole in, a NyQuil-induced fever dream. And whereas some people are fortunate enough to effectively go through the dream wasteland and come back with, a great religious insight or profound truth, mine was related to the Disney canon. Where it came thing where it's the anthropomorphic animal characters are not actually animals. What we are seeing is their animus, or their animal totem representation in art, much in the way that the Egyptian gods were not actually half jackal and half man, but the jackal was an aspect of depicting them, and I was so sick and high on NyQuil, I woke up and wrote this down because this was a profound revelation. But I think it works for understanding it.
No. It absolutely does.
Or we could just say that everyone's furries and okay.
No, you've got to make it richer. But it is it's true that it is actually part of the same inclination that makes when we tell myths and folktales, they bring animals to life as if they were sentient human beings. It's clearly the same impulse that makes us do, talking animals and cartoons and kids' books and
so my takeaway is that they are with the air quotes around this, human characters, but are depicted in anamorphic personification.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. They're animal totems or whatever. It's just like I say, in old myths, they'll describe Toad went to the market or whatever. Right. But then, and sometimes he'll be a toad, and then sometimes he'll be like a person who calls himself Toad, and the story will just not make a distinction between whether it's literally
struck by lightning. Things happen.
Yeah, well, all kinds of different things, but certainly a lot of ancient myths, that kind of things happen. Anyway, but
and I wrote down evidence, for example, despite the duck-like nature, Donald is neither necessarily aquatic nor is he gifted with flight.
No, exactly. Yeah, he can't fly, he can't swim.
No, he can swim. He's a part of the Navy. That's the whole point.
Yeah, but he does not live. Okay, he lives on a houseboat, but he does not live in the lake. In that he is capable being perfectly buoyant at a resting state.
Well, that's true. For some strange reason, he wants to put the triplets in life vests, even though they're all ducks.
They're all ducks. Yeah. And somebody posted, I think it was a Floyd Gottfredson comic panel on Twitter the other day, and it was Minnie Mouse seeing a mouse in her house and going, eating a mouse!
Yes!
And I didn't even register with me, but somebody was like, well, yeah, sure, if a Neanderthal walked into your house, you'd be horrified, too.
No, my favorite response was, okay, put yourself in Minnie's perspective, and you see a tiny naked man run across your kitchen.
Basically. I was gonna say, it's the same thing as that.
No, it's even more horrifying to Minnie. This is some rats in the wall Brown Jenkins bullshit going on here.
And I mean, I can vouch for this personally. There's a lot of evidence that these animators and comic book artists, they just stop thinking of them as animals at all.
Definitely.
Like, there's definitely scenes where they're like, oh yeah, Donald Duck's like, yeah, I'll have the chicken. It's like, you know a chicken. What, like, your friend is a chicken.
Well, what's going on? If you actually watch the opening sequence of the new DuckTales, you see three different sailors, and one's a duck, one's a pelican, and one's a seagull. And they're all shooing away a seagull.
They also put in a segment in which a pug woman is walking a pet pug dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Precisely. And like I say, and even weirder, as we say, the early, we're talking about Horsecolor, Clarabelle Cow, and Goofy, who is apparently a dog, who are all sort of, in a romantic relationship, so they're not even the same species. Usually they try to pair up the same species romantically, right? Mickey and Minnie, Donald and Daisy. That's a case where...
Yeah, but that is due to old-timey missegregation laws and the Hays Code.
And I was going to say, they're also mostly tertiary characters, so they don't care as much.
I don't know. Well, like I say, if you read the Floyd Gottfredson comics, they, Horace, Clarabelle, and are actually in them quite a bit. In fact, Horace was almost his sidekick before Goofy really took over the role.
Right.
Mickey, I mean. So they're pretty well established. And stuff like that.
That's in part because I know that apparently Maybelle is really super popular in Italy for some reason, but I think that has more to do with the fact that certain characters have weirdly global appeal in certain parts of the world.
Oh no! Yeah, like DuckTale and Disney comics are apparently really popular in the Norwegian/Scandinavian world.
Yep.
Yeah.
They love Donald over there.
So much so that the Dungeons and Dragons translated volumes for that region have effectively duck people as a core species.
Really?
Yes. You can find art to it too, to where there are effectively barbarians and warlocks and that drawn as basically Donald Duck-like creatures.
Huh.
And this is from legit Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
You were mentioning that.
Yeah.
It's actually a great idea for an RPG. Like, that's actually really cool. Just do it an all funny animal, or, fantasy RPG. That'd be great.
Oh my god!
And
just all animals. Everyone is a different type of animal.
In fact, has anyone ever done an RPG where it's like cartoon rules? Like, you can't actually die.
Shoot. Fuck, what was it called? Was it just called Toons?
I don't know.
But there is at least, like, a classic one that is supposed to be a pen and paper game that works on Looney Tunes physics.
Oh my god.
And, like, Looney Tunes logics.
Jeez.
That would be great. But so my question, of course, is you obviously can't die.
Right, and in fact, it actually has the thing that, like, one of the taglines is that where nobody dies, everyone has fun. I think was the tagline. And yeah,
I'm guessing it's meant to be kid-friendly.
Depending how you play it. But no, there is, like, an actual thing your character can't die. There's just an exit from the scene, a la Wile E. Coyote. And that's an actual baked-in mechanism there, and I always thought that was really clever.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly. You don't die. It's just you fade out, and then you back at hole in the next scene. That's kind of cool. That's neat. I remember they did a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner video game. Again, it was a Super Nintendo, I believe, and insanely, you play as the Roadrunner. And to me, I'm like, if anyone in that relationship is a video game character, it's Wile E. Coyote, obviously. Because he's going to get run over and then he's going to come back with his next life or whatever. Like, of course you do it as the Coyote, right? I couldn't believe they didn't see that. And instead, you're the Roadrunner, and so theoretically, you're the Roadrunner constantly getting killed by Wile E. Coyote, which is against the entire spirit of the cartoons. So I'm just amazed that they do that.
Which now just makes Wile's existence an even greater hell, and even when he succeeds, the universe restarts to give the Roadrunner another shot.
There you go. Yep. That's true. There's a deeper existential exploration.
I'm saying that Wile E. Coyote is basically the family in funny games.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Which I haven't seen, but I think I know what you're talking about.
For the reference, if people haven't seen it, Funny Games is a horror comedy question mark thing. Where the concept is that it's a home invasion, but the sadistic people who are taking this family hostage are aware that they're in a movie.
Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
I did not know that.
Well, the scene I was actually referencing is that there's one part near the end where one of the hostages manages to get free and kill one of the people. And, like, go through this, and the main, villain there sees all this, basically curses that, like, shit, things all go down there, and takes out a remote control and rewinds the movie.
Really?
Yes!
Wow!
I did not know that movie was that bonkers. I thought it was just a really violent home invasion thriller.
Jeez.
And I believe
I gotta see this now.
It's been a bit since I've seen it, and it's subtitled, but I do believe that character explicitly addresses the audience and breaks the fourth wall before and after that.
Oh my god.
So then it becomes a very bizarre thing where I think the intention was supposed to be that by watching it and being the audience is complicit or accomplices.
Right. Yes, I've heard that about that movie. Yes. Okay. All right. That makes sense. Okay. Huh. Interesting.
It's very odd and somehow not a David Lynch movie. Which I'm just going to say, somehow not David Lynch is now a genre.
Not. Well.
Lynchian, yet not Lynchian. Yes. Huh. Interesting. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Check out Funny Games now.
I thought of the example of them just forgetting that the character was supposed to be an animal. Betty Boop.
Huh?
where you said that the animators just stopped thinking of them as animals. Betty Boop was originally a poodle.
Yes, she was. She was originally a poodle, and then eventually they got rid of the dog-like features.
Yeah.
Although her boyfriend did remain a dog until he was just phased out entirely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but what's his name?
I'm blanking on it.
Bobo Binko or something?
Hold on.
Yeah, and
should we just transition this into an animation podcast? Because we're doing good.
Sure. Hey, we're all animation fans. Well, if you want, I mean, we can switch
Fearless
on to what
Fred,
you
it says? No, that can't be right, because that's clearly a human, and he looks
starts with a B.
And he looks horrifying, like a Betty Boop version of Andre the Giant.
So her boyfriend's name was Bimbo.
Oh, right. Yes, how could I forget that?
How could you forget that? Yes. No, I think just to make one last point there, I think the thing about the really early cartoons, and it's true of Horace and Clarabelle and
I'm
Goofy
sorry.
And
apparently, apparently, I'm corrected by the internet that Bimbo Boop is Betty's grandpa, not boyfriend.
Oh, what?
That's
what comes up when I type in Betty Boop dog boyfriend.
Okay, so I meant like an FAQ thing, and it says Bimbo is a cartoon dog created by Fleischer Studios from Out of the Inkwell series. Betty Boop was created to be his companion, but eventually became more popular, and Bimbo was moved into a supporting role, and says that he is Betty's grandpa.
Okay.
Okie
dokie.
Whoa! Hold on! No, here's a clarification. Where another, FAQ, just like in the drop-down, clarifies, who is Bimbo in relation to Betty Boop, and says that he is Betty's main love interest. So, I'm really hoping the first one is a mistake or a typo, or else things got very weird.
Yeah, needless to say. Wow. But
yes,
I always knew.
Yeah, I'm going with that Bimbo dog is the boyfriend, and we will just ignore that other thing.
Because I'm on the Betty Boop Wikia for Bimbo, and it doesn't mention anything like that. The closest thing to that is that some people think that Bimbo was turned into Pudgy the dog, which is untrue. Pudgy and Bimbo are completely different characters. So that's the only thing that this says about Bimbo being a different character than what he is. Or was. So.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, just as I was saying, just one last point about that. I think part of the reason there's this, you got horses and cows and dating each other and dogs and humans, is that the early animation, it's so rough and there's so many, they're all sort of on this basic model of, black skin with little pointy ears and then big eyes and white mouth, nose pieces. So it's almost like you can't even tell what species they're supposed to be and who cares, which is why I think they moved away from it in the later cartoons as they started to get more sophisticated with the character design, and you could tell, oh, that's a cat, that's a dog. Okay, they can't be boyfriend and girlfriend anymore. Or they can, but it's... I think there are a few holdovers, but mostly I think that's what happened.
And not to mention, a lot of this was also... A lot of designs were based off of vaudeville acts at the time as well. Which is why they all have gloves. Gloves as hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's lots of... Well, that, and I think the other thing is just because it was black and white, you want to have, you can't just... If it's black silhouette, if the hands were black, it would be harder to read what the hands were doing. And the face, I think that's another aspect of that. And also, unfortunately, some racist aspects, because they were kind of being blackface in some ways. Or model to some extent, although it's a little hard to say exactly where they drew that line and where they were just...
There are some characters that are worse than others, and most of them are that people remember. So...
Yeah. Which, again, fortunately they moved away from. Anyway, on that note...
I gotta tell you, the Google image search is absolutely horrifying and wonderful.
Why would you go into that?
I wouldn't there. There also appears to be, if I'm reading this right, and there's some strange ones in some of the black and white things where they did shading, and it appears that Betty Boop is shaded as being black?
Oh, yeah, that's, of course, she was, in fact, you could say canonically Betty Boop is black, because she was modeled on an existing singer and dancer. I forget who it was, but yeah, she was a well-known, if you Google Betty Boop inspiration or whatever, there was a well-known singer and dancer in the 20s, and she was the basis for Betty Boop, which is what I always...
Helen Kane.
Oh, really? Okay.
Betty Boop first made her appearance in Dizzy Dishes. Although Clara Bow is often given as being the model for Boop, she actually began as a character of singer Helen Kane.
Yes, and if you see her, and it's funny because there's a picture of her with kind of spiky hair, and Helen Kane, I mean, and she looks a heck of a lot like the actress who's around these days.
Although Helen Kane apparently sued Fleischer for her likeness.
I'm saying that Helen Kane was white, though?
I'm seeing, okay.
Oh,
hang on.
This is another rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm seeing someone else claiming there was an actress named, or there was a singer named Esther Jones.
Yes.
Who was the inspiration. No. Then it starts talking about Helen Kane.
Because Helen Kane did sue them for using her likeness.
There's a few different people who are supposedly the inspiration for Betty Boop, but at least one of them was black, definitely.
Esther Jones, or Baby Esther.
So I think that's...
Or Gertrude Saunders.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so it's a...
But anyway, I was just seeing there's apparently one in a Popeye cartoon where she appears, and it is shaded distinctly different.
Right.
Yeah, there's some colored cartoons of her where her skin tone's been made darker deliberately, for various reasons.
Yeah. Anyway, but I always said there's enough precedent there that if they ever rebooted Betty Boop, they should make her black. That should I think they should do that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
So unless we have anything else to say on that subject, Ing, if we want to move on to yours, because, as I say, I've got to get going. If you said yours was a little heavier, so
this isn't on a specific clickbait, but on kind of a content/clickbait network, which kind of, as of this week, is getting some bad press, and I thought it might be interesting to talk about that stuff, especially, I guess, looking behind the scenes for how sausage is made, kind of thing.
Okay.
So this week, a group document was published that is public called Not So Awesome, which collects grievances of former employees or creators for the website Channel Awesome, previously That Guy with the Glasses.
Yes. Oh, that!
Yeah, and it is a 60-page document, effectively, just fully getting in one place and cataloging a lot of basically horror stories or grievances some people have been sharing over the years, and some new things, too.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. But, so, how far into background should I go? But the so the basics is that you have this website where, despite kind of like in the age of YouTube, this apparently was an actual corporate thing. There was a corporate structure with CEO, COO, CFO, etc., which is fucking wild to me, as I can't kind of, like, wrap my head around that, but there was that, and they got recruited effectively more content creators to their page, basically under the promise of exposure. That, you know, that their platform gets more views there, and that it's a prestigious thing from being, like, in a...
This was just before YouTube became, like, a viable career option.
Yeah.
We should say.
Right, but that
I'm
apparently the consistent plan for contributors was to pay an exposure, and kind of the punchline is that people were paid an exposure and the check still bounced.
Ooh. That's not good.
Yeah.
In what sense?
Well, one of the big criticisms of there is that they get people promising to pay them an exposure and then do not actually provide actual exposure on the website, either due to seemingly website interface incompetence, kinda what seems to be some favoritism of talent and not promoting new creators in that, and just the general sense. So it became the thing, yeah, you're asked to, and at the part of this time, there were apparently some restrictions that you had to provide a content once a month at minimum there, and there were there were actual work guidelines and things that you, like, could or could not do, including social media interactions, etc. They wanted people to ask permission to go to cons, which they didn't like some cons or saw some of them as there. So there's exerting a level of control as a production house would, but the promise is that they are being paid in exposure for being on the website, where whilst the website makes money through ad rev.
Ad revenue.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and then if they're telling people that, oh, you'll get the exposure there, and they're not actually promoting them or putting them in a place where people can get clicks, that's sort of the joke there. You're being paid an exposure, and the payment isn't going through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I see.
Yeah.
And truth be told, like, there have been tricklings of all of the bad stuff happening at Channel Awesome / that guy with the glasses. So, because slowly over the years you've had personality after personality leaving that website and doing their own thing.
Yeah.
I think probably one of the most well-known people at this point who was on that guy with the glasses was Lindsay Ellis, aka the Nostalgia Chick. And she left, and she is doing just fine for herself, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. If you want another interesting character, I would suggest looking up a video on YouTube that's about Noah Atweiler, aka Spoonie. Frederick Knudsen did a really good video on him. I'll link it in our Discord.
Yeah, so the Too Long didn't read that in that Noah Atweiler back in the...
Akva said YouTube.com.
Shoot. I thought I turned off the Discord speak and spell function, but it's still going. Sorry. Noah Atweiler was in the 2010 era, I kind of want to say about that time, was a fairly popular and actually, I will say, talented along that line of, like, YouTube-like work.
Right.
Things became coming out more and more that it seems that he suffered from undiagnosed bipolar disorder, which resulted in very embarrassing and kind of off-putting public meltdowns.
Pretty much. Although Noah did make claims that it was harder for people to see his content on the website because it would always get pushed down in favor of other content.
Yeah. Usually
content that was done directly from Nostalgia Critic or whoever else that they might be favoring.
Yeah.
So even though it probably was him trying to make excuses, he probably did have there was probably some truth to his claim that people weren't seeing his stuff because he wasn't being properly represented.
Sort of thing. It was like, yes, and this was, while behavior-wise, someone was having basically a psychiatric disorder or, like, a nervous breakdown, walking around the euphemisms, but to be, like, blunter and non-PC about it, just because I'm crazy doesn't mean I'm not right.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I do suggest watching that whenever you get the chance. Frederick does a lot of really good videos about weird trends. Like, he did a really good one on the Finger family, if you do ever get a chance. But I do recommend that.
I don't know what that is. What's
watch.
in my mind sounds absolutely horrible.
The Finger family.
The Finger family video is basically that whole trend that was happening on YouTube with poorly sung children's rhymes and why they are getting stupid popular.
Okay, again, to go back to the runner, that's not Alan Parsons or Blue Oyster Cult. I don't know that.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Everyone loves the Finger family. That's what all the kids are talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Literally kids in this case.
Yes.
Very young kids.
Very young kids, as in...
Is this
a
Homestar? Is this a Homestar runner or your salad fingers?
It's not salad fingers. It's definitely not salad fingers.
So a lot of the documents are things that come from there. One, the CEO seems really kind of abusive and prone to corporate bullying, which, when I was talking over with one of my friends, said, we made the joke there, well, yeah, this is good second-hand Schadenfreude, because, well, these people have done nothing to personally slight us. Their behavior and mannerisms are similar enough that they emotionally provide a good stand-in for people who fucked us over, thus we get enjoyment from seeing them being exposed.
Oh, right.
I mean, being some honest about why there's a drama drawer, but, yeah, that and just some amusing stuff came from, just poor communication and unprofessionalism, which gives the view that they want it to be very professional and, like, work-like in all the instances where it would be beneficial, and then loosey-goosey in all the instances where that requires them not to do as much. Which, that sure sounds a lot like some of the bad jobs I've had.
Yeah, pretty much.
Some of the technical things, including some amusing stuff about not knowing how filming works. Including for some movie projects not knowing that, water and food had to be provided.
What?
Yes.
What?
Apparently an instance where, due to a poor stunt, someone passed out from being duct taped to a tree.
Oh my God.
What? What?
Apparently breaking out with, a filmmaker and film critic, Ed Glasser, who was working, camera work for one of those, and had a falling out over a long argument where he could not get them to understand the 180 rule.
Oh. Okay.
So the one background, the 180 rule is something that anyone listening to this most definitely knows, but you probably don't know the vocabulary of it.
Yeah, like when it's done poorly, you can tell.
Basically, it means that when you're filming a thing, you don't cross over an imaginary 180-degree tangent.
Fence.
Yeah, fence to where the action is, so as it doesn't look like between cuts people have switched positions.
Right. Yes, for conversation, and it's true in comics as well. You don't. Yeah. So you don't have a guy on the left and the guy on the right talking. A guy on the left and a girl on the right talking, and then suddenly the girl's on the left and the guy's on the right in the next panel,
Right.
or the next shot, as it were.
Without,
yeah,
I mean, there is a way to
confusing.
do it, but most people don't know how to do it
Without,
properly, so it just ends up being jarring.
Yeah, and to fix that, there's either a clear thing of showing that there's a movement transition to clearly show that there is the crosslap, or you intentionally break it to create a surreal atmosphere, most famously, I think, done in the red bathroom scene in The Shining, where Kubrick actually does that repeatedly. Right.
But again, you kind of have to know what you're doing if you're going to be breaking that particular rule.
Right. But but it's the sort of thing that, like I said, it's so much in just the casual language of visual art and storytelling that everyone kind of... Like, once it's explained to you, you're like, oh yeah, I know that, even if you didn't know the dialogue. So it's very strange to have that people who've apparently done, like, 2 previous movies and onto the 3rd get to the point
not realize what it is.
Not only not know what it is, but get in an argument with the more experienced filmmaker about it.
Weird.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre. It's really, really bizarre.
Although my favorite ones in the bizarre things were apparently Doug Walker acting as directing, yelling directing comments to people in the background at filming that was done at a park who were not part of the shoot. They were just people at the park.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
A megaphone and saying, "None of you appreciate my genius."
And to be fair, there's always a learning curve in any artistic endeavor.
Oh yeah, certainly.
That is fine, but there's also some stuff in, like, I think Reddit or other interviews of Doug Walker feeling himself to be a film expert and comparing himself favorably to Spielberg and Ebert. Mm-hmm. So some of this with the arrogance comes off as funny to where you're yelling at random people in the background to get into the meeting.
Yeah. That's not how that works. No.
But that's funnier, the stuff. Some of the darker things and the newer things that come out that, well, for one thing, is that there were cases of sexual harassment and stalking within the corporate structure. Including, apparently, someone doing it repeatedly until they were fired for unrelated reasons. The human resources director being required to work every day of the year.
What?
Yeah.
That's illegal.
To quote the document, non-union work, what can you do? And she was eventually fired.
That's still illegal!
Yeah, she was fired, but tells of an instance where, after they fired their COO, who had been stalking / sexually harassing her at times for unrelated things, members of the company armed with baseball bats and one person with a samurai sword came to take her to an impromptu made safe house.
What?
Yeah. I just want to give this comedy of errors that this is a thing presented, and also the big takeaway there is that it reveals everyone was given pepper spray, and that Doug Walker thought to test the pepper spray by spraying it into a sink, which did not go well.
Well, at least he didn't spray it into his own face.
Okay, here's the thing. Think of how a sink is shaped.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So he didn't actually aim for the drain, he just aimed for the sink.
Well, here's the thing. I wanted to be kind to this because that is a funny story.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say, well, maybe I wouldn't have thought of, like, how sink and fluids work, but going that. But then I stopped and thought, you know what? Even in that instance, I would have thought, hey, you know what? Chemical mace and pepper spray smells really bad. This should be tested outside.
Yeah.
even if I wouldn't have been smart enough to realize that issue, I think other comment sets would have hit in.
Maybe. Probably.
There are things of an unnamed producer by request of the people who came forward, who was apparently grooming underage people for sexual relationships.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
Okay.
of course. There always has to be
Yeah,
that guy.
because there always has to be.
Yeah.
And to tie it into the worst thing, into just the worst of the internet there, it has... it talks about the firing of Dan Olsen, who I believe is now known on YouTube as Folding Ideas, who worked there briefly, but did investigative journalism on Gamergate while it was starting to go around, and subsequently became targeted by harassment there, and the company's response was to fire him because of the harassment and blaming him for causing controversy.
Oh, okay, because that's how that works.
Don't they want controversy? It's like,
well,
I don't know.
yeah. I mean, that's also where it gets into the clickbait thing. Are you doing real content, or do you just want clickbait? And if you're firing someone for creating controversy for something where they actually didn't do anything sleazy or wrong...
Yeah, no, he was just doing his job. And I actually do Dan Olsen. His videos are quite good when they do come out. But that's just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and if you want
hey,
to
we're
learn...
going to hire you to do the thing, but the thing has gotten too dicey, so we have to fire you.
Yeah, Lindsay
Sorry.
Ellis lists that story in apparently one of the big reasons why she left.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's to me.
Yeah. So, that's it. You know, just check out and support the people who have left there, because that's
There's
that.
quite a few at this point.
But
Yep.
it really, it also does come across like they talk about a bunch of the stuff that, like, Doug Walker, that Astrologia Critic was doing, that was, quote, that was, you know, accused by the way their thing worked of pushing other people away, because he started producing a bunch of just high volume stuff that was basically very disposable and low effort and low scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, to have more and more content, and I thought that was interesting from our point of view of saying, well, here's something that you would think kinda... I mean, I guess always borders on clickbait-y, but as, I guess, the business treadmill keeps revving up, you're tempted more and more to do just more disposable stuff just for the clicks.
I mean, that sort of makes sense, but... And that's why we have places like BuzzFeed where they do so much disposable stuff, and then once in a blue moon, they produce something that's actually really, really good and important. But I can't say that Channel Awesome has really ever done that.
No, because they fire
entirety.
they fire the people who do that.
Yeah, who do stuff.
This looks like journalism. Don't ever let me see this on my desk again.
We're hiring you to do journalism, but you're not going to actually do journalism. How dare you do journalism?
Yeah, looking through it, there's also stuff with a failed crowdfunding project, which is funny on its own. It was like, look into that, because that is an amusing and kind of sad comedy of errors, and sort of the things of shortchanging artists.
Oh,
and then
great.
it comes, which Adam, as you know, that's like part of the run there. But kind of the thing that it really comes down to is, like, one, never, like, be paid in exposure.
Oh, that is true.
And I guess always be, like, I guess kind of wary of businesses or ventures that really have, like, a strong corporate structure or that, but want to present, like, the friendly kind of, we are Apple, Pixar, we do things loosey, we're your friends kind of face.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, you know, because that seems a lot of things, and a lot of people are saying why they stayed so long is they, okay, you know, well, this it had the thought, well, this isn't like a real business there. This is just a bunch of, group of it's like, we are friends here. This is a group of friends, and we're like doing this thing together. And eventually it came down there. It's like, well, yeah, that's how we see it, and that's how fostered. But there's a CEO and a COO, and people drawing in money that other people aren't seeing, and that sort of thing.
Right, and there isn't enough transparency with all the actual divisions that are there, because if they had an HR manager, like, that means that there's actual employees who are also getting paid.
Yes.
So, like...
That is definitely... I've even sort of experienced that firsthand, where there was a company and it was, we're starting up it was going to, to be teaching people animation, and they said, we're gonna, we're just starting out. They'd actually been in business for years, but they kept restarting as new businesses, basically.
Yeah. That's red flags right there.
See, I didn't know that at the time, of course. This was right out of college. I thought I'd get a teaching job and stuff. It was going to be really cool. And then, and then it was like, we can't pay you. Well, because we're still struggling to get it all together to make everything get together, And eventually all the teachers kind of got together and essentially were about to march on the boss's office, and they went and they filed for bankruptcy and said, you were all contractors, so you don't get any money out of our, basically.
Oh, that's such bullshit.
It is. And we didn't even have the fun workspace, although they did let me, write my own curriculum and stuff, but it was because they weren't serious. They were just bilking students, They were a diploma mill for animation, essentially.
Right.
And one thing that came out here that surprising was kind of looking in there behind the scenes there of just how kind of corporate structured it is for something that very much had the appearance of being kind of like a grassrooted, naturally grown thing from the internet. Like, that it was actually started by people who were executives before and approached Doug and Rob Walker on this business venture thing. And the kind of one thing that just still baffles me is that Doug Walker does not actually own the rights to his character.
No, he does not.
Which
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a thing that is kind of a thing that, like, baffles me. How do you, like, kind of catch lightning in the bottle of getting some success on something, doing stupid shit on the internet, and then kind of just diarrhea shit it all away, recreating the same corporate structure you would think people would go to internet work to specifically avoid? But, yeah, Mike McCond, or Mitchund, I'm not good at names. The CEO there is apparently, like, a very, business bro, MBA, like, professional executive, basically. So, but still, this is somebody who, is a professional businessman, but, like the animation thing we're talking about, fostered a culture where it was meant to be, we're really, loose. This is just a natural outgrowth of the way the internets work. These are just, people coming along with passion. So, and, like, using this guise to be unprofessional where it's beneficial.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, basically.
People should watch out for that, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's like a warning thing that apparently there's, like, actual business sharks there know that this is a strategy to bilk people. And will play into intentionally creating that culture.
Yeah. And the thing is, you have to assume it kind of came about, like, without anyone planning it. It really was legitimately, we're a cool company, but we're incompetent. And then that led to them going, hey, we can bilk people. And that became a strategy, right? Like, but I don't believe it started as a calculated strategy. I think it came out of people who probably legitimately wanted to run a loosey-goosey, as you say, corporation, but discovering that let them stretch it out longer than otherwise they could have.
Yeah, and that's a chicken of the egg. Legally, I can't speculate on actual motives.
Well, probably what happened is that they started it, and then they realized that that they could make a lot of money off of other people without having to pay other people, and then they just kept doing it because nobody said anything. Yeah. So,
except as the thing, people were saying anything, and they were basically saying, "Yeah, we're looking into that. We're taking care of that.
Yeah,
that'll come soon." So,
and then it never did.
Yeah, and it's part of why it seems that the people came and made this big document. To the outside viewers, it looks just like a bunch of people working out of a garage doing oh gee shucks, we're trying. But then it was pointed out there's a corporate structure behind this, and if you're actually incorporated and not just an LLC. Or that, so like a small business structure. I don't know if there's a Canadian equivalent for tax purposes.
Fine. I think that's what we call them too.
Okay.
Not that I would know, but yes.
Fair enough. It's it's kind of like you want the net down when you serve, but the net up when people return. And
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
You're not a big professional thing, so
you
can be unprofessional with your contractors, but, these people work for you as contractors, so they have to be professional.
Right. The expectations that you have for them don't fall on you whatsoever.
Right.
That's always bullshit. Always bullshit.
And, I think it's worth, being suspicious there and saying now, maybe all of this isn't just for everyone, well-intended and people get over their head. Maybe some of it is intentional, guys.
Well, it is now, for sure. Yeah. Guys, I have to get going, unfortunately.
Oh no!
We're approaching my deadline, so I don't know if you want me to check out or if you guys want to keep going.
No, this is a good place to stop for me, too.
Yeah, this is perfectly fine. Okay. I mean, I think we've been going for about an hour, so...
Yeah, over an hour, I think, so I think
yes.
We're good. All right, everyone, so we're going to wrap it up here. As always, it's been a blast. So good night from all of us here at Destroy All Clickbait, me, Avi, and Ing. And remember, keep your browser history clean and your ad blockers pumping.